I love to start just shifting, woo, the energy a little bit with my beautiful tingshaws. And so let's start with that today. For me, and I hope for you, this sound frequency, the vibrations just seem to move through my field, just like little laser beams breaking up any old dense energy. So I love it for clearing the space. I also love it for like a demarcation, making a little notation to the universe that we're starting something new here. We're coming together in this sacred container of Facebook. And, you know, we all have stories about what the earlier parts of the day were like, or the three of us, as well as I'm sure everybody who's listening. And without dismissing or diminishing those things in any way, just having this little bit of sound will just allow us to set them aside for this time that we have together. And so we're here to talk about magic. So let's just take one moment or two to gently place hands over the heart. Beautiful alchemical chamber of the heart. Allowing your eyes to close or just gently lower, whatever feels comfortable. Just beginning to slow the breath, perhaps to the count of 5 seconds for the inhalation, 5 seconds for the exhalation. I like to imagine the breath flowing in and out of my heart, just like a beautiful, gentle wave flowing in onto the beach with the inhalation. And then gently receding into the ocean on the exhalation. And in this beautiful flow of breath, I'm going to add a few words, high vibrating words, words that are now being identified as being in the enlightenment circuit of the brain. Gratitude, appreciation, compassion and joy, freedom and love. And as you continue to breathe, just allow the frequency, the high vibrations of these words to move in and around and through all of your bodies, your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. You might repeat them to yourselves or just listen as I say them again. Gratitude, appreciation, care, compassion, joy, and love. I imagine every cell in my body turning its face like a sunflower to the sun, opening up to receive these beautiful vibrations, the healing, calming, restoring energy that flows through the body as we shift into this parasympathetic aspect of our nervous system. So just taking a few more moments now as I bring this to a close. Relaxing your hands. Perhaps bringing some small movement into fingers and toes, stretching or yawning to bring yourself all the way back, and then allowing your eyes to float open on the next wave of breath. Welcome back, everybody.
Catherine, thank you. I know I was feeling really flustered around the technology, so thank you for grounding and centering us.
Yeah, it felt important, so I'm glad that that helped.
Yeah, what a beautiful way to demonstrate what it looks like to incorporate magic into your life and into your work by just pausing, calling in our guides, regulating our nervous systems, and setting the tone.
You know, interestingly, so I'll just jump in since we're going to be sort of free flowing, but for me to do that is really expressing my two primary magics, right? So there are 6, and I know we'll talk about this more. We're each going to share ours. But the 2 that feel particularly potent for me are compassion and expression. And compassion is all about coming from the heart, seeing and feeling and holding space for others, seeing everyone as whole and complete, just as they are, and empowered. And then expression is just bringing through, right, what feels appropriate in the moment, whether it's sound or movement, or in your case, painting, or, you know, in Annette's case, finding something, you know, to magnify and expand upon. So for me, just that little 3-minute exercise, the heart-brain coherence, is a perfect way to bring both that compassion magic and my expression magic right here, front and center, to start our time together. So which one of you ladies wants to take the baton and share a little bit about your magic?
Well, if I may, before we get into the different magics, you did mention that there are 6 magics. And for those out there listening who are wondering, what are these 6 magic types that they're talking about? We are referring to I'll call it a system that Darla Ledoux developed as a way to speak about our natural abilities. And Darla talks about them as 6 magic types. And really quickly, there's compassion, which Catherine just mentioned, which is, as she said, coming from the heart. There is sensation, which is when we know things because we feel it in our bodies. Vibration, when we go into a room and we can tell, like, oh, this feels really good in this room, or like, whoa, there's tension in this room. Recognition, which is my jam, which is the ability to see the things that are obvious to me, but not necessarily to everyone else. Expansion, which is where Annette really shines. And Annette, how would you describe that? I think of it as like seeing the big picture.
Yeah, it's being a visionary. It's also just being present. Like, people get idea generation, and it just all of a sudden popcorn popping, kind of like, oh my gosh, what about, like, I hadn't even thought about that. Like, it's like you can only see through one window, and all of a sudden the window gets really big.
So being a visionary and seeing the possibilities, right? Did I mention them all? Sensation, vibration, compassion.
Well, expression.
So I think of expression as kind of getting out of the way a little bit and channeling what wants to come through. And we see this a lot in artists and musicians, in writers, but really expression is, I think of it as like getting lost in the zone. And before you know it, it's like, whoa, how did I just create that thing?
And then not always necessarily, even for me, knowing what I said. Because for me, it sometimes comes through as light language or information that is not, it's not coming from my cognitive brain, right? It's, you know, we're talking about being sourced, right? We all have these beautiful ways that energy moves through us and then gets expressed in the world. And with expression, it may be that, you know, I say something but don't even remember that I said it because it wasn't mine to begin with. It was just energy moving through. So.
And expression magicians experience that a lot. Well, you'll be in conversation and you'll say that genius thing, and your friend will say, "Oh, can you repeat that so I can write it down?" And it's like, no, the moment has passed. It came out exactly how it was meant to, and before you know it, it's gone.
Yeah, yeah. And what I love about that, it's how it's meant to for the person in the moment, or for the group, or for the whatever the experience is in the moment.
And that's the thing about our magic, right? That when it wants to come out, it's now. It's in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's creating the atmosphere. If you read Big Magic with Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about you have space, right? In order for that
Yeah,
to
I love
be
that
present.
book. And actually, you made me think about how in the book it talks about how when an idea hits you, you enter into this agreement with this idea, and you have to execute now, or that idea will go to somebody else who's ready to see it through.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we are to really embody our magic, that is one way that we can do that. When we get struck with an idea, taking action and doing so right away and not questioning it, right? If it came knocking on our doors, because it's meant to be expressed through us in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have the volition if we want to or we don't. You know, sometimes there's so many ideas, you're like, there's only 24
Right.
hours
I mean,
a day.
discernment is always a part of it.
The
And, you know, for me, the flip side of the coin is if I start acting on, even though I'm a little bit of a slower processor, like when you ladies start doing the popcorn thing, sometimes I'm like, whoa, because it does take me a little longer to process. But other times, if I just feel something like, okay, this is the blog post I want to write, or this is a program I want to, if I take too long with it, if it takes too long to come to a point of fruition, it's like all the energy, it's like this energy just gets sucked out of it. And by the time I'm ready to put it out in the world, I'm not even interested in it anymore. It feels old to me. So for me, following that flow of energy, especially the expression, or even the sensation, because we all have, as Jaslene started to describe all six, we probably all have elements of all six of these. Annette, what else do you see for you? We've talked about you being, the expansion energy, but obviously there's more.
Yeah. Yeah, I see connections too. So I'm a connector. I'm definitely an expressionist. I always tell people, write down if you like what I say, because I will never remember it. And you'll be surprised. I'm as surprised as you what comes out of my mouth. Like I don't have any idea sometimes, depending when I'm in the source. Expansion for me is also feeling, I design and draft homes. So it's feeling the land and what it wants. And feeling how people want to live and helping them get clarity on that. So yeah, then expanding. Like people don't always think about that your space is another supporting part of how you create your dream life.
I love that. And when Annette, when I was talking about you, I described you as an intuitive interior designer, right? Like standing in the space, grounding your feet, and sort of asking the space, ooh, what do you want to look like? What do you want to become? That feels like a way certainly to exercise your magic. I see that show up in my work as well, in that when I am working on somebody's logo design or their web design, any sort of branding element, I like to get to know them and get to know, how do they want to be remembered? How do they want to be perceived? How do they want to walk through the world? And let's design your branding from there. And then really kind of step aside, and I'll even say out loud, okay, spirit guides, I could, do your thing, show me what you want this logo to look like. And I kind of get out of the way and just kind of let my hand move, and whatever comes through, really following that and going along with that. And so that's the expression coming in me. But I find that I do that also in my personal life, not even outside of work. There'll be moments where, well, something that I'm doing a lot of lately is listening to what my body wants and giving my body what it wants. So I will literally pause at any given moment and say, okay, body, what do you want? And that's how I do my scheduling for the day. So it's all
Yeah.
these little ways that we use our magics.
I think the word, go ahead.
It's
Annette.
really, oh, I just think it's really listening. I mean, it's really like learning to create this space where you can listen. Um, it is new for many people to listen to their bodies, and our bodies and our spaces actually are very, there's a lot they say to each other. So there's lots of different interactions. I always say we have our meat suit, we have our brains, we have our, you know, soul and spirit, you know, then you have your heart. So it's all of those things that how they show up in our physical bodies, how they show up in our spaces, how they show up in our businesses, how they show up in our lives. And it's almost more about rhythm. For me, nature's a big part of it. I feel like Mother Earth has everything and we just have to tap into her and she'll be like, here you go. It's, I do yoga, but I can't balance very long, even though I do it every day. But I can figure out rhythm, right? Like I can be like in rhythm or out of rhythm. So for me, that's what I follow a lot. Is just really noticing when I'm out of rhythm with when everything seems like they're everything's going in different places. I'm like, oh, I need to pull back.
There's so much in the conversation. I keep like trying to hold myself back from jumping in. So I mean, I think, Jaslina, the word intuition is key because it really it flows through all of the magics, right? We are in the highest expression of our magic, whether it's compassion or expression or expansion or recognition or sensation or vibration, when we are tapped in to source and to our intuition, right? And the way I know for me that has happened more and more is that I have slowed down and, you know, really, you know, and sometimes the universe slows us down. It's like, you girl, you need to sit yourself down. Or, you know, sometimes it can be through illness. Sometimes it can be, you know, just through some kind of life change that doesn't on the surface appear to be serving us. But ultimately, when we realize, oh, okay, this happened, so I didn't need to have a piano dropped on my head to slow me down to listen to what was happening, right? Because more and more, you know, and for me, this is a particular focus, is around this reemergence of the divine feminine energy on the planet and everything we're talking about being in rhythm. Women are, everything in our lives is rhythm, right? From our bodies to, you know, being in touch with the earth and the seasons. And so as we bring more and more of this divine feminine energy onto the planet, balancing out this sort of egoic patriarchal energy that has created so much imbalance, it's really, she's really inviting us to slow down, to breathe, to turn inward, to stop looking out there for answers and, you know, what are the rules and how should I do this? And, you know, I got to make my schedule and I got to be marketing in this way, or I have to be interacting with, we're being invited more and more to drop in, to rest when we feel like resting, to work hard when we feel like we have that energy. So this idea of the intuition, the rhythms, the seasons, all of that feels really resonant for me.
I'm thinking also of the folks who aren't as used to working with their magic and how some of this might be new to them. And so another way to look at it, in addition to listening, finding your rhythm, finding your balance, finding your flow, tapping into your divine feminine, another way I like to think about it is kind of like claiming your knowing. You know, when you know what you know and you don't even know how you know it, but you know, right? That's your magic speaking through. And so, you know, I know plenty of people who the word intuition, they're like, oh, yes, they totally understand it. And those who are like, oh, I don't know. It's that knowing. And that's what we're really referring to here.
And I think it's the trusting, like you experiment and you trust, like, was that ego? Was that self? I mean, it takes some time. My boys call it Spidey sense,
Yep.
you know, Spider-Man, because all hyper is to learn how to deal with his Spidey sense. And so I think that's kind of a fun way to look at it, is we all have a little bit of a Spidey sense, and we got to learn when it's on and when it's performing versus being cultivated.
And the more we trust and the more we learn to listen to that, the better we become at understanding our magics and how we operate. This is something that I talk to, what, Annette?
And I think connection and co-creation. I mean, the more we just slow down and we be present and listen and ask questions, not just of ourselves, but of others, and have conversation, the more things it's a little bit easier, you know, like instead of needing to have an answer, just like what's the best next question?
I love the idea of living in the question. I used to be, I got to have the answer. You know, I have 6 brothers, and I came from this very sort of competitive, right, you know, type A brain, how to be how to be smart. Like, I can relate to Darla with some of this, how to have the answers, how to figure it out. Was pretty judgmental. And it has taken me years and years and years of letting go of those things. And I can't even say over the last 30 years how that has all happened, but really coming to relish the living in the question as opposed to having to have the answer.
I love that. So for those of you that, like me, like to keep sticky notes with really good quotes that come up in Zoom calls, that's a good one. Living in the question. I'm going to make sure to write that one down.
Yeah. And how comfortable is it living in the question? Whether that question is, should I leave this job, or should I be in this relationship, or should I stop eating meat, or what the hell's happening in the world? Like, you know, there are so many big questions, and sometimes we can use distraction and avoidance and all the things, right, to not sit in the question because it can be uncomfortable. Because the question is uncomfortable, but B, because the answers may not easily be coming, or we may be getting answers that we don't really want to hear. Yes, stop drinking alcohol, right? It is not good for your body. Damn, that, you know. So how comfortable is it when we hear the message? How receptive are we to it? How are we then able to integrate it into our lives? You know, there's so many layers of complexity and that can be unpacked.
Well, I'm thinking about what Annette said earlier about listening, trusting, and connecting. And I would kind of go back to that, in that the answers and the magic is in there, in the listening and the trusting and the connecting. And when those big questions come up that we don't want the answers to, or that we're avoiding, or we're just simply not sure, taking a pause to listen. I have a client, a lot of the work that I do with my clients is helping them tap into their magic and to understand how their body communicates with them. And so she's come to identify that when she gets a tingly, sparkly feeling across her chest, that's a yes. And when she gets an uncomfortable feeling in her belly, that's a no. So little ways that we can learn to identify.
I'm a little more in a concrete world because I physically build things, and so I have a client, and most of my clients are going through life transitions, because you usually change where you live because you're having a baby, you're an empty nester, you've gotten a divorce, you're getting married, right? Like some life transition. It's so I have a divorced client, and they are like, well, I mean, I like this kitchen, but do you think it's going to be too boring? And so they finally got to the point they're like, oh, I'm performing, aren't I? I'm thinking about what other people want. I'm like, yeah. So we have to think back, you know, because I help people make idea boards and really get a mood board going of how do they want things to feel, function, and flow. And so then I have to bring them back to it. So I do a little more of helping them get some concrete things to help them stay in their truth. So we do the spirit part and the creating the mood board or idea boards. And then they start to feel like, oh, I'm leaving it because I'm worried about what people think, right? Like I'm left to me. So
I
that's
love that.
kind of fun.
It's so great. Well, first I love when you say the flow, the function, and the feeling.
Yeah,
I love that. And then I love
everything's
grounding it and saying, okay, am I saying that because I want that or I don't like that, or because I'm wondering what other people are going to think when they come into my space or come into my class or come into anything.
It's hard when you've been in a union for a really long time and you're back to single, or if you're single and you're going into a union, because you do who you be does shift a little bit based on what relationships you're choosing or what relationships you're transitioning from.
So, Annette, who you're being, can we just pause right there? I find that, and I've heard, you know, my mentors talk about this, how being really magical or being really source is less about what you're doing and so much more about who you are being.
I was so excited because Atomic Habits is a business book. And guess what? He goes, start with who you want to be. If you want to be a healthy person, your question is, would a healthy person eat this? Would a healthy, like you start with your being. Yeah. And I was so excited because this is like a strategist book for business owners to create atomic healthy habits. Yeah. And he started with the
so
being.
It's kind of the do, have, be. It's the be, do, have.
Mm-hmm. And even be, we have to do the breathing exercise you took us through, Catherine. We have to realize that we live in a really uncertain world with, you know, if our nervous system, my dog got bit by a pit bull this morning. So my nervous system has been a little on the scared side. So it's really hard for me to get to be if I'm like constantly looking for threats, right? Like if my nervous system is hijacked, I can't even get to the be. So it's like, it's almost like breath.
Yeah.
Trust
me, I've been preparing this talk for several weeks now that I'm doing on Saturday to a group of medical professionals on healing from the heart, right? Emotional alchemy. And the whole thing is about the autonomic nervous system, you know, epigenetics. So I am right with you there. I'm curious, or Jessalina, you can certainly, but maybe when you finish what you were going to say, whether in terms of your magic, whether there were times when you hit it or whether you felt like it wasn't okay to show up in your magic. But you were going to say something else first, so.
I was just going to say that I love the formula of want to embody your magic, breathe, be, do, have. Love that. So I just wanted to just emphasize that as a quick little formula we can hold on to. But Catherine, I love your question because, oh my goodness, did I hide my magic for so long. I'm going to dare say for most of my life in some ways. I think that, well, I think a lot of people will resonate with this, but I won't speak for anyone else. I'll speak for myself. For a very long time, especially when I started my business, I had this idea of how I needed to appear really professional in order to draw in the clientele and in order to and feel like people would trust me with their businesses, with their websites. And so giving off this illusion of being really professional and wear the blazer so that I can look like a proper businesswoman. I love how other people look in blazers. I look so stupid in a blazer. And so that is like a tiny example of one of the ways that I've held back in my true nature in order to project the idea of what I thought people would want me to be and in order to get clients. what I have found more and more and more is that doing that suppresses my magic. It dulls it. It gets in my way. It doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve my clients. So in an attempt to try to show up the best for them, I actually did the exact opposite by hiding my true nature. And so wearing my colorful, my colors, my dangly earrings makes me feel a lot more comfy. Talking about energy and magic and calling in our spirit guides when we're working on your branding and on your transformation coaching, that's where I have seen the best results with my clients. That's when my work is flowy and easy and fun, when I'm not trying so hard to appear to be a certain way, but simply when I just am.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I bet that I'm willing to bet a lot of people can resonate. I'm curious if you have experienced some version of that yourself.
I can definitely resonate. I'm at 48 now, and I would tell you that living truth started when I got my divorce, but I had a corporate career. I really felt professionalism is how you built a business. So I went from corporate to building my own company, and I was like, it has to be professional, to have systems. And I love Excel. I'm not going to lie. I mean, even for Excel back and forth, I'm like, we are nerdy because we have a long distance relationship. But I know I'm the biggest nerd. I totally, with my high-end clients, when I did my $1 million+ houses, my builder and I were super, we were in relationship together too, and he would protect me. So I would tell them I'm going to have a dream. Like, I don't know when you'll have a plan, when I have the dream. And I would dream and the plan would drop in, and we had this beautiful co-creation did together, and he passed away 3 years ago. And it's really been hard because I worked with another builder that was more like, I would learn all these things from these big houses, and then I call it the target, kind of like Pottery Barn, and then you target it, it gets straight. So everybody can afford it, right? Like, you're like, okay, how do I systemize it, right, to make it affordable? And so I let go of all of that. And then I've just now started talking about my truth and how I live, and breathing with clients, and showing my heart, sharing my work, right? Like, Allison Crow is the one that coaches me on that. Like, just, share your heart, show your work, see what happens, live your truth. And I was like, are they ready for it? Do I need some kind of warning label for this?
And that comes with a warning label. Watch out.
Yeah,
Hiding, expanding. Awesome. I have a couple of thoughts about that. One is, I want to welcome Darla. Hi, Darla. Thanks for joining us. And I was just going to reference something that you've said, in the reports about the different kinds of magic, that it's so intrinsic to who we are, to our nature, that we don't even know. Like, when I didn't at first identify as recognition, which is sort of probably like, it's in the top 3, let's just say. But when I started to read the description of being able to see patterns, I always thought I had to see energy. But what I realized is that I can talk to clients over a period of years and remember things that they've said years ago, or particular phrases or words that were meaning for them, or dates, or something about one of their children. And then I'll just pull it out of the air and say, well, this makes sense to me because of XYZ. And they're like, what? You remember those things? And it's like, yes, it's like a map in my mind. I just, like, all of these little pieces in this archaeological dig for that person are all sort of still on display, and I can pull them out, in the most unusual places. So learning, recognizing that recognition is actually a thing, and I've been seeing triple and quadruple digits and all of those kinds of things for 25 years, but didn't necessarily see that as recognition magic. On the flip side, sometimes there's some shaming around that. And I still, at this point in my life, cringe at the word woo-woo, because my former husband would say to my children, oh, there goes mom and her woo stuff again. Oh, I feel the emotion coming up even as I'm saying that. So there was a, there was a suppression. There was a shaming, a making fun of, not just in his mind, but then saying that to the kids. And it's taken a long time for my kids to not see me as woo-woo, to appreciate and recognize all the gifts that I bring and that I have. And that's a difficult and challenging thing. And I share that, not to throw myself a pity party, but to say I think a lot of us have been, especially women who have this intuition, who have this magic, all these beautiful natural abilities that have been systematically shut down, suppressed. We've been punished for it. We've been burned at the stake. We've been put in stocks and made a laughing stock of. So I think as women, we carry shame, fear, disowning of our own beautiful gifts and magic because of our own personal and collective history. So I just sort of went out on a
Well,
but this is what happens with expression. It just comes through, right?
yeah. Well, okay. So I want to respond to that. That the more for you, woo is a word that makes you feel it. I feel that way about artsy fartsy and hippy dippy and witchy and all the other ones, which I've been called all of those things. I take it as a compliment now. I'm like, oh, so you mean I'm extra sparkly and multi magical? Got it.
Yeah.
But these are not the things that historically have been really appreciated. Like in our resumes, we're not likely to put highly intuitive, right? We're it's just not a skill that's really appreciated. And yeah, it is such a valuable skill. And I can think of so many skills that are so precious, so valuable, and make us so amazing at what we do that would not be appreciated on our resumes.
Yeah. Agree. We can all agree.
I think,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's the stuff that
It's
it's the stuff that we're purposely keeping off our resumes that I think makes us really, really magical. That makes us really special and really good at what we do.
Many, many years ago, I don't know whether it was in a sociology or a psychology class, because I majored in both, but it was one of them when in college. And the professor was making a list of sort of the kind of traits we all want to have, and then the kind of traits that were not so great. And now, as I look back at that, I realize all of the traits that we should aspire to and live by were all the masculine, right? Competitive and hardworking and right, go get it. And then on the other side were what Darla, or we might call, the soft skill, right? The things that allow us to connect with other people, with source, with our own inner knowing. Rather, it's the more the being, less the doing, right?
Yeah.
But those were not, seen as positive or admirable traits, and may still not be in a lot of environments.
So as we wrap up for what our magic is, what is your one most favorite thing that you do with your magic, or you share with your magic, or what is the greatest, let's share gratitudes. What's your gratitude for your magic? My gratitude for my magic is just the expansiveness. And I love the light bulb when people's eyes are like, oh, and then I love getting texts later like, okay, and guess what? There's always all the
Yeah.
ands. So that's my favorite part about to use my magic and share
that.
it.
So when coaching and working with my clients, my recognition really kicks in, helping them see the things that are hidden from their view. And what makes me feel really, really grateful is when I'll get a text that says, like I did this thing that, and I don't want to share any personal details, but I'm totally thinking of somebody right now, who they make really brave moves because they're now able to see this thing that was hidden from their view. And so being able to guide them through that is so rewarding. And then in my art, having something in my mind and in my heart and being able to express it, that feels really satisfying to me as well.
Beautiful. So speaking from the compassion magic, I would say being able to hold, and I mentioned this already, but to hold the vision of whoever I'm working with as whole and complete, and hold that truth of them until they can begin to hold it themselves. So, you know, on my website, I have these 4 truths. You are not your story. You're not broken beyond repair. The things that happened to you were not your fault. And you can heal and become the beautiful, brilliant soul that you came here to be. So, and I love when that gets, again, this morning, sort of an unsolicited email from a client saying, wow, I just, in thinking back to when we started to work together, which was not that, she said, I'm just a completely different person. Like, and it was not that long a time. So holding this vision of someone's truth in a non-judgmental way and appreciating that this is the journey that their soul chose for this lifetime. Their human mind would say, why the hell would I ever have chosen that? But their soul knew that this was the highest journey that they could take in this lifetime. And so that's how I would wrap up my compassion magic.
Yeah, as we close out, Catherine, I want to respond to what you said about, you know, her feeling like a completely different person, even though you hadn't been working together that long at all. That's very common. When we sort of surrender and trust our magic and allow that to come through, everything really does fall into place. If we allow that, if we really own our magic, and it doesn't take long because it was meant to be a part of us all along.
Yeah.
Well, I think it allows them to
Yeah.
be their magic. When our magic, we own it and we be it, then it opens
and I
that
like
door
to
for
think that when a client comes to me, that we have a sacred contract. So if we're already in sacred contract with each other to do this work, then it's just divinely guided and inspired and sourced the whole way through.
Yeah.
We'll ding to that.
Thank you guys.
This was
It was
awesome.
fun.
So happy we, got here and had this opportunity. And thank you all for watching. It's been a pleasure. I know we haven't been responding, but I can see the feed and I see who's here. And thank you so much. And many blessings to everybody, beautiful co-hosts and everybody watching and whoever may see this later. Namaste, everybody. Yay.
May you all continue to embody your magical selves.
Amen to that, sister.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.